In this video, we will be going over what septic tanks are, what that means for you in the transaction, and helping you understand a little bit more when you do have a property that's on septic. Let's dive right into it. My name is William Singh. I'm a local real estate agent here in Portland, Oregon, and today's video will be going over septic tanks. Now, let's dive into what a septic tank is. It is a waste management system to handle any waste products from your home. So this is an alternative for using the public sewer and is more of a passive strategy to separate the floatable matter and the solids. So with this, you usually have the septic tank and then you have the drainage field. And with septic tanks, you usually have about 80% of these are going to be about 750 to 1,000 gallons, and about 15% of them on properties is going to be about 1,250 gallons, and then the last 5% is around 1,500 gallons. So just know that this is one of those things that when you have more storage, you're able to allow a higher occupancy with those homes. Now, a common question I get is, are septic tanks bad? And the answer to that is no, not necessarily. So just one of those things where as long as they're properly maintained, it is something that can last for a long time. Now, this is one of those things that needs to be cleaned every 5 to 7 years, and then you should also be cleaning the filter for it about every year. So as long as they're properly maintained, they can typically last for a fairly long time. Now, let's dive into the pros and cons of a septic system. So some of the pros of a septic tank is that, one, it is environmentally friendly, and two, is that it is typically a little bit more cost effective than a sewer line. The main reason for this is that you have an ongoing cost with sewer lines. You do have a similar cost with cleaning the septic tank, but is usually a little bit lower. And then they're also very durable. That's kind of the third pro of this, and they last anywhere between 20 to 40 years, but if properly maintained, they might be able to last a little bit longer as well. So just something to kind of keep in mind. Some of the cons of having a septic tank is you have to be very mindful of what you're flushing down. Know that this is not going to a public sewer system to be treated, and if you're putting down harmful chemicals or things that might be able to clog up, that would be something that you would be responsible for. Now, a second con to this is that you will have to do maintenance. This is one of those things where usually you're going to have to clean out the septic system every 5 to 7 years, and maybe even sooner depending on how much it's used. So one of those things where you'll start seeing a slowing of drainage within all of the sinks within the house, or they'll start starting in the bottom sinks first and they won't drain quite as well. So that would be a good indicator for you to be cleaning out that septic. The third con of that is going to be that you will have to kind of do any repairs for any drainage fields or drainage blockage or anything of that nature. Just know that you will kind of have to maintain the system. Whereas when you're on a public sewer line, depending on what county you're in, you may be liable for anything that is before the curb, or maybe it's something where if it's after the curb, then the city might take over it. Again, this depends on the jurisdiction. I know that in some areas, so let's say that Portland, the curb or the main thoroughfare way is where Portland will take up the responsibility for any damages to the pipe, and then anything before that will be your responsibility as a homeowner. However, in Beaverton and other areas like that, it's actually at the connection line that is the homeowner's responsibility, or up to that connection line is the homeowner's responsibility. So it just kind of depends, and just kind of keep this in mind when you are looking at whether or not you want to have a septic tank as a part of your home. Now, how much does this cost, and what do I need to get inspected? This is one of those things where you usually have three main things that you're going to be looking at. One is finding where that septic tank is. Two is going to be cleaning it. And then three is actually inspecting it. Now, when it comes to the finding the septic tank, this is one of those things where the seller might know where it is at, or they might not. Hopefully they do, but if they don't, then you're going to be charged about $150 per hour to try to find where that is. So something where they can come out and they'd flush a little probe down the toilet and then can find where the septic tank is. They have to then dig it up. It's usually about 1 to 2 feet below the surface. So one of those things that can be easy to get to, but if there's any bushes or anything else that's kind of growing on top of it, something to kind of keep in mind. And if it is a situation where the seller hadn't put a cap on it, just a good idea to have a cap installed so that way it's a lot easier to access in the future, especially when you're trying to clean it. So with that, the second thing that you're going to be doing is doing a cleaning and emptying of the tank. Now, for this, it can cost anywhere between $570 to $895, and this kind of depends on the size of the tank you have. So higher sizes is going to cost a little bit more. This is something that can be covered by the seller and is typically covered by the seller if they had been living in that place. That is sometimes an exception when it comes to flippers where they just came in and are flipping it, so they didn't do a ton in terms of adding into that. Usually they also clean it out beforehand as well. Now, this gets us to our third thing, which is actually inspecting it. So once it's been emptied and cleaned, you can actually inspect it at this point. This is where you're going to be paying around $225 to about $295 for this service, and they'll fill it up and basically see if there's any cracks, visually inspect it as well, and make sure that it's draining properly. Now, there's a couple things that kind of come after this, but we'll dive into kind of what that is, of like what the potential septic issues are and how much those might cost shortly. But just know with all of these that the pricing can vary depending on where you're at and what time this is. Depending on how long this video or how old this video is, might be something where those prices have increased. So just kind of keep that in mind as well. All right, so now what if there is an issue with the septic tank? So this is one of those things where usually there's two main areas where the septic tank may fail. One is the septic tank itself. This is one of those things where maybe there's cracks in it, or it's basically just not holding the water or the contents of it as well as it should. And then number two is going to be the drainage field. Those are the two main components when it comes to a septic tank. And some things that might be you want to fix is if the septic tank is broken, then you can basically install a septic tank right next to it and then attach it to the same drainage field. Now, this is also the same for the drainage fields. If the septic tank still works and then you just need to put in a new drainage field, that is something that you can put in as well. So again, one of those things where you can kind of figure out what will work best. And it might be something where, let's say that it's just not draining properly and you just need to hydrojet the drainage field, then it might be something that you do that and then it starts working as well. So there's kind of a variety of situations that you might run into in terms of issues with this. Now, the cost of this can vary greatly, so just kind of keep that in mind, but anywhere between 10 to 20 grand is a rough estimate of where that is. So it is a big thing to make sure that you're wanting to negotiate when it comes to the price of the home and maybe just getting closing costs or figuring out how to actually deal with that. Again, this is only if there's an issue with the septic tank. Now, the second major thing is, like, let's say that you can't actually add a new septic tank or add in a new drainage field to make that septic tank work. The next alternative is to be putting in a public line into the sewer. So this is one of those things where you'll have a line that goes to the public sewer, and depending on how far this is away from the public sewer, the house, that is something where the cost can go up dramatically as well. So this might be also something where it might be 10 to 20 plus grand in terms of being able to connect with the city. So things just to kind of understand when you are looking at this. So if you do have issues with the septic tank, this is one of those things where you're going to want to consult with your agent and really understand what the pros and cons are of your situation and what you might think is best. Again, one of those things where an agent can help advise you, but ultimately the decision is yours. So keep that in mind and what you feel comfortable with. Now, when it comes to doing a septic inspection, it's something that I highly recommend that you do, just so that way you understand where your septic system is at and understanding what might be potential issues. During this transaction, it might be something where you can negotiate the seller to deal with the issue before close, or it might be something where you are given closing credits to then deal with the situation as well. Again, depends on your situation. And again, one of those things where you're going to want to talk to your agent and have a detailed conversation about what you think would be best and what they would advise for. If you felt like this was not a drain on your time and was helpful, it would be wonderful if you could hit that like button and subscribe. With that, thank you so much for watching.